In a remote town in Japan's Tohoku region, a delinquent youth named Aoki is counting cash at a bus stop, while a high school student named Aoba is idly fiddling with his phone nearby. At this moment, a strangely dressed man approaches them, his body adorned with various tools, making a continuous clanging sound as he moves. Before Aoki and Aoba can engage in any substantial conversation, Aoki turns his attention to the unexpected visitor. The man, named Takeharu, feels fortunate that the bus has arrived on time. However, the bus is quite unusual, displaying no route number and marked with the words, "Poor Village." As the driver steps off the bus, he immediately gets into an argument with Aoki. After Aoba drives away the troublemaker, he boards the bus directly. The driver instantly recognizes Takeharu. He is actually Yosaburo, the village chief of the poor village, who has come specifically to pick up Takeharu and take him to the village. Yosaburo speculates that Takeharu must have a reason for coming all the way from Tokyo. Initially hesitant, Takeharu stumbles over his words, but catches sight of an unusually looking old man along the way. Yosaburo explains that this man is a villager named Nakanu-san, and also the guardian spirit of the village. In fact, the place was originally named Kamiurike Village. This name stems from the severe socio-economic conditions in the village. The total population of the village is 494, with a high proportion of elderly residents, 40% of whom are over 65 years old, totaling 198 individuals, putting the community on the brink of extinction. Yosaburo stops the vehicle in front of a shop called Amano Supermarket, which is also Yosaburo's residence. Yosaburo's wife, Akiko, warmly presents a prepared gift. However, Takeharu, evasive in his words, fails to express any gratitude. Akiko adds that the area is called Poor Village for another reason: the complete lack of basic infrastructure such as schools, hospitals, and police stations, forcing villagers to rely entirely on village chief Yosaburo to drive them to the nearest town. The reason for Takeharu's visit is that he has purchased an old house in this area. After paying 1 million yen, he acquired this old-style house along with a piece of farmland next to it. Takeharu's goal is to seek a secluded environment. Fortunately, although the house appears old, the interior is spacious and has a rich historical charm, which leaves Takeharu basically satisfied. Yosaburo intends to understand Takeharu's situation and soon learns that he has not only discarded his phone, but also does not plan to use electricity, running water, or gas. It should be noted that it is now late autumn, and lacking basic living conditions such as water, electricity, and heating will make survival difficult. Yosaburo raises his voice in agitation. Unexpectedly, Takeharu suddenly bursts into tears and quietly admits that he originally planned not to spend any money while in this place. Yosaburo felt helpless, believing that even in remote villages, no one could completely escape the life of the monetary economy. Indeed, after the sunset, the severe cold made it unbearable for Takeharu. Such low temperatures could not be resisted by several thermal undergarments. At this moment, Yosaburo discussed this unusually behaving visitor with his wife. So resistant to using money, Yosaburo deduced that Takeharu must have had serious conflicts with others due to financial disputes. With rain falling outside, Yosaburo began to worry about Takeharu, who lacked water and electricity. But when he went out to look for him, he found that he was not at home. In desperation, Yosaburo called the village resort to inquire, only to learn that Takeharu had not gone there either. Just when he was at a loss, the old man Nakanu-san suddenly appeared. With a yellow glow in his eyes, Yosaburo followed Nakanu-san in a daze. It turned out that Takeharu was trying to chop wood in the rain to make a fire for warmth. Yosaburo angrily cut the branches and warned Takeharu that catching a cold could be life-threatening. Fortunately, a fire had already been lit inside the house, and the temperature had risen somewhat. Yosaburo also brought the meal prepared by his wife, allowing Takeharu to regain his spirits. In the early morning, Takeharu experienced a nightmare in which countless shadows shouted, "Money!" and rushed towards him. Upon waking, he found the room filled with smoke, and Yosaburo hurried into the room, sternly reprimanding Takeharu about the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. He brought breakfast again, as that day was the day to take Takeharu to inspect the farmland. Several elderly villagers boarded Yosaburo's small bus, and Takeharu shyly greeted everyone. The daily transportation for the elderly was this small bus belonging to the village chief Yosaburo. Upon learning that this young man was attempting to live without any consumption, all the elderly displayed similar expressions, as if observing an abnormal behavior. The farmland rented by Takeharu belonged to the farmer Miyont-swan. At this moment, Miyont-swan realized that this young man had not brought boots and planned to plant rice seedlings barefoot, making him a complete novice. Faced with Miyont-swan's continuous inquiries, the overly stressed Takeharu fainted. Soon after, the sound of Nakanu-san's camera shutter woke Takeharu. He was surprised to find that the entire rice field had already been planted with seedlings. Takeharu initially thought it was a miracle of his guardian spirit Nakanu-san, but in reality, it was Miyont-swan who had completed the work using machinery. Meanwhile, Yosaburo went to the village office regarding Takeharu's placement issues. Although a house had been purchased, no registration procedures had been completed, leading to administrative difficulties. As a result, the task of delivering meals at noon was taken on by Yosaburo's wife, Akiko. Akiko, who is straightforward, directly asked Takeharu why he had come to this place from Tokyo. After hesitating for a moment, Takeharu finally confessed his past experiences. It turned out that Takeharu had worked in credit at a small bank in Tokyo for 4 years. Due to the bank's merger with a large bank, the loan limits for several clients were drastically reduced. Funds were withdrawn like oxygen, and several of Takeharu's clients chose to end their lives as a result. Since then, Takeharu developed an extreme fear of money, becoming unable to touch banknotes, check passbooks, or even enter banking institutions. Hearing this, Akiko took out a passbook she had accidentally discovered. It turned out that, due to Takeharu's failure to sort garbage, the couple found Takeharu's passbook and passport while organizing. The balance in the passbook surprised everyone. Takeharu actually had over 6 million yen in savings. Not only that, but Akiko also offered her unused bicycle to Takeharu, and even invited him to work at her supermarket. Seeing Takeharu appear uneasy, Akiko decided to leave first. However, this kindness and care made Takeharu unable to help but fantasize. Suddenly, a bicycle collided, and this time, Takeharu could no longer suppress his impulses and had an intimate encounter with Aoba. Calmly thinking, why would the young and beautiful Aoba be interested in Takeharu? The root still lies in the rumor about that 6 million yen in savings. This matter quickly became a hot topic in this small village. For a man like Takeharu, who had been single for a long time and lacked social experience, Aoba's youth and beauty made him completely lose his self-control. His excessive actions frightened Aoba, causing her to hurriedly flee. Fortunately, Takeharu accepted Akiko's proposal to work at the supermarket. He did not ask for a salary, only hoping to exchange labor for some goods from the supermarket. Elsewhere, the Hunting Friends Association held a celebratory banquet at the village hotel, where the president had long harbored inappropriate thoughts about the landlady, Natsu. After several rounds of drinks, people began to tease the villager Ikichi. Although Ikichi was also a villager, he had been affiliated with the Hunting Friends Association for decades without any achievements, yet he had obtained the position of vice president. All of this was manipulated by the president, who had recruited the timid Ikichi with the intention of promoting him to run for the position of village chief in the impoverished village, to realize his subsequent plan for village consolidation. Hearing Ikichi express ambition, the president was quite satisfied, and then began to physically harass Natsu. At this moment, Natsu's father, Nakanu-san, suddenly burst in. This guardian spirit did not make any unnecessary movements, merely patting the president's shoulder, causing the president to lead everyone away as if hypnotized. Nakanu-san needed to go to the hot springs, leaving the task of hosting Takeharu to the staff member, Katsuo. In contrast to Natsu's gentle demeanor, the 2 terrifying scars on Katsuo's face left Takeharu speechless. However, Natsu kindly offered the leftover food from the banquet to Takeharu. At this time, Natsu's son, Akin, approached. Takeharu noticed something unusual. Why did this child's appearance resemble that of the village chief, Yosaburo, so closely? The full moon hung in the sky, and there was a forbidden area in the mountains where villagers were not allowed to enter. It was Nakanu-san's exclusive sacred place. It was here that Nakanu-san had previously commented that Takeharu's ideas were unrealistic. A week passed, and Takeharu indeed made no purchases, which became a topic of betting among the villagers. Unexpectedly, Yosaburo suddenly rushed out, the reason being that child who resembled him, Akin. Seeing Akin enter the supermarket, Takeharu feared that this romantic affair would be discovered by Akiko. However, Akiko was very kind upon seeing Akin, though the pen she unconsciously gripped tightly betrayed her inner turmoil. Realizing that Akiko was angry, Takeharu had no choice but to muster the courage to act as the cashier. This was a torment for Takeharu. The moment he opened the cash register, countless images of bills assaulted him like blades, causing him to faint. Time passed, and Takeharu had established his life principle. No purchases, no sales. Unexpectedly, Aoba, who had been missing for days, stood at the door. Aoba suddenly cried, claiming she was sorry for Takeharu. In her fragmented narrative, Takeharu learned that their previous intimate contact was actually a trap. It turned out that the delinquent youth Aoki, upon learning of Takeharu's 6 million savings, had instructed Aoba to seduce Takeharu and capture evidence, intending to extort him. Faced with Aoki, Takeharu had no ability to resist. He intended to refuse but was met with Aoki's punches. This scene happened to be recorded by Nakanu-san. Akiko discovered that Takeharu was being forcibly taken to the bank by Aoki and hurriedly called Yosaburo. However, the bustling crowd and the sound of the counting machine in the bank frightened Takeharu into fleeing. Aoba couldn't stand by any longer. Fortunately, Yosaburo arrived just in time. However, before Yosaburo could take action, an extraordinary old man had already intervened. Aoba pulled Takeharu, claiming they would elope to Tokyo, igniting Takeharu's feelings of love, and he resolved to confess. Unexpectedly, a cat suddenly appeared on the road, causing Takeharu's car to lose control. Yosaburo finally found an opportunity and ruthlessly taught Aoki a lesson. As the situation was about to spiral out of control, Akiko hurriedly brought Nakanu-san over. Nakanu-san stopped Yosaburo and presented a photo he took of Aoki attacking, using the same threat to retrieve the inappropriate photo from Aoki. At that moment, the police arrived at the scene of Takeharu's car accident. The bus had overturned severely and crashed Aoki's sports car. This time, Takeharu experienced a strange dream. In the dream, he and Nakanu-san were at a mysterious hot spring, feeling at peace, as if floating on the edge of life and death. On the brink of death, Takeharu felt he had caused trouble for many in Tokyo, and even after coming here, he was still troubling others. He felt utterly worthless. At that moment, Natsu walked in and told Takeharu, "Caring about your own value is proof of being human. That's why Takeharu can't let go of everyone in the village." In a daze, Takeharu absent-mindedly asked about Akin. Sure enough, Akin was the child of Yosaburo and Natsu. Nakanu-san stated that Yosaburo had also been a self-exiled man. Once a man gives up on himself, the meaning of life often remains only to live for others. As Nakanu-san gently patted his shoulder, Takeharu regained consciousness. He had been unconscious for a full 2 weeks, and now everyone was gathered around him, with the walls covered in encouraging words from the villagers. Yosaburo covered all the medical expenses, a kindness that Takeharu deeply remembered. Fortunately, Aoba only had a small scar on her forehead and was not seriously harmed. Takeharu developed sincere feelings and decided to take responsibility for Aoba. Now that the bus was damaged, even a second-hand vehicle would cost 2 million yen. Yosaburo intended to bear the costs himself, but everyone thought it was inappropriate. Unexpectedly, Takeharu appeared with 3 million yen, planning to fund the purchase of a new vehicle for the village. The more Takeharu did this, the more Yosaburo felt his own incompetence. Akiko, who intended to lighten the mood, found that no one could smile. Ikichi suggested that this amount be used as the naming fee for the bus. Upon explanation, this was the money that Takeharu had retrieved after fainting 3 times. He genuinely wanted to help everyone and repay the debts of gratitude. Yosaburo ultimately agreed. Thus, Takeharu's life in the village became increasingly joyful, as he finally did something within his means for the villagers. However, good things often come with difficulties. Aoba, who had promised to be with him for life, left, not only ending their relationship, but also taking away 1 million yen. That night, Takeharu drank excessively. Yosaburo felt quite sad for Takeharu upon learning of this. However, in Goro's view, Yosaburo's life was already quite complete, with an illegitimate child, a beautiful wife, and being respected as the village chief. Since Yosaburo was willing to give everything for others, could he truly understand the inner suffering of others? Yosaburo sat on the ground, speaking incomprehensible words. Takeharu could not understand. His words became increasingly excessive, even claiming he wanted to date Akiko. This action completely enraged Yosaburo, stirring up memories of his dark past. He threw Takeharu to the ground, his eyes filled with hatred for the past. The next day, a news segment about the impoverished village aired on television. In the program, Takeharu had bruises on his face, and village chief Yosaburo was also wearing sunglasses. Ironically, the name Takeharu gave to the bus meant fool in the local dialect. Upon seeing this, a mysterious man decided to take action. Takeharu became completely famous in the village. Every villager who took the bus referred to him as President. Takeharu also took on odd jobs, accepting work and conducting exchanges through barter. At this time, Nakanu-san noticed the mysterious man, clearly not a good omen. Returning home at night, Yosaburo found the water pipe was continuously flowing, and the tomatoes at the door were in disarray. Akiko mentioned that an old acquaintance of Yosaburo had visited, leaving behind a mysterious gift. Moreover, the nameplate of the new bus had been altered to Murderer. Yosaburo was unwilling to call the police and could only have someone cover it with items. Soon, both Takeharu and his wife discovered that many earthworms had been placed among the onions at their door, and that mysterious man sat down in front of Akiko. When asked about the gift received, Akiko could no longer hold back and took out the rotten salmon, questioning why the gift would be a rotten salmon. Knowing the other party's arrival, Yosaburo prepared to go home and question them. But unexpectedly, they appeared together with Takeharu. Yosaburo was extremely rude to that person, seemingly unwilling to meet them at all. The man revealed the reason for gifting salmon. Years ago, Yosaburo had broken his leg with a salmon. Yosaburo hurriedly took him away. The man kept provoking, even threatening with Yosaburo's wife, Akiko. Yosaburo could no longer tolerate it and began to teach the other party a lesson. The man rolled down the slope while trying to escape. Yosaburo did not stop, and as it seemed about to turn into a disaster, Takeharu hurriedly intervened, which restored some of Yosaburo's sanity. Watching the rushing water on the television, Yosaburo remembered the lover who had died tragically because of him. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have faced such a tragic end. Akiko understood what her husband was thinking, and she was also the only woman who could accept Yosaburo's past. Perhaps the past could not be changed, and cherishing the present was the most important. Meanwhile, the chairman met with Ikichi again. The chairman demanded that Ikichi must run for the village chief election. Only in this way could the poor village merge with Aoki town. Ikichi had also made up his mind to run. Under the chairman's arrangement, he launched a series of campaign activities. Upon learning that Ikichi was running, Yosaburo did not say much. There was another reason behind this. Because the poor village had a guardian spirit, no matter who ran for village chief, the villagers would only vote for the candidate recommended by the guardian spirit. Last time, the old guardian spirit Nakanu-san chose Yosaburo, and Yosaburo thus became the village chief. The chairman believed it was time to take action. Akiko returned to the supermarket and found Takeharu knocked out. A masked man had knocked Takeharu down and kidnapped Akiko. Both speculated it was the man from a few days ago. However, the old villagers were heading to watch a soccer match, and Yosaburo could not get away at that moment. Takeharu mustered the courage to offer assistance. Although the village was not large, it still took time to find a person in a short period. As expected, the man had taken Akiko to Takeharu's house. Nakanu-san appeared in time and assigned Katsuo to find Akiko. During the search, Takeharu encountered Aoba, who had returned after exhausting his funds. Aoba stated that the man seemed to be in Takeharu's house. Takeharu finally found Akiko, but also fell into the other party's trap. Seeing his cash scattered all over, Takeharu was willing to exchange all his wealth for Akiko's safety. Akiko suddenly realized that Takeharu did not exhibit the symptoms he described when touching the bills. It turned out that the man's target was not money, revealing a shocking insider. Yosaburo was actually a wanted criminal nationwide. On the other hand, the music coming from Aoki's car made Yosaburo extremely agitated. He not only damaged the vehicle, but also chased after Aoki. Unexpectedly, during the chase, he barged into the police station. At this moment, Yosaburo found himself trapped. Katsuo arrived just in time and knocked the man down with a stick. Clearly, Katsuo was an old acquaintance of his. At this point, everyone learned that Yosaburo had been arrested. As the man said, Yosaburo had indeed been a detective. He refused to admit to the suspicion of murdering his lover. Takeharu also learned that the man who had just committed the crime was named Tajimi. Natsu revealed what she knew. Both Tajimi and Katsuo were members of a gang, and at that time, they had a close relationship with Yosaburo, exchanging information and using each other. However, Tajimi fell in love with Yosaburo's then-girlfriend. Thus, Tajimi violated her, and Yosaburo broke Tajimi's leg in retaliation. Shortly after Tajimi was arrested, Yosaburo's girlfriend went missing. Yosaburo had confronted Katsuo face to face, and Katsuo's silence made Yosaburo furious. He had guessed the outcome, but chose the worst way to handle it. He let Katsuo go, and carried the suspicion of murdering his lover for many years. One day, to evade capture, Yosaburo came to a shop, where he was discovered by his guardian spirit, the old father Nakanu-san, and was elected as the village chief. The reason was just as Yosaburo himself said: only those who can completely abandon themselves are more suitable to serve as the chief of this village. All of this was actually the president's conspiracy. After learning that the guardian spirit was protecting Yosaburo, he used Tajimi to kidnap Akiko and Aoki to provoke Yosaburo, among a series of actions, in an attempt to make Yosaburo walk into the trap. Clearly, this was all to ensure Ikichi's smooth election as village chief. Now burdened with suspicion, Yosaburo could no longer be re-elected. He suddenly thought of someone, the peculiar Takeharu who did not use money. Clearly, Takeharu was a suitable candidate. Nakanu-san warned Takeharu, "In the face of Yosaburo's kindness, you cannot escape. In the face of the opportunity to give up everything for yourself, you cannot escape." Whether or not one likes oneself, if one does not like oneself, is it really impossible to give up the self? Takeharu, named Takami Gojo, perhaps really should try once. As election day began, Takeharu paid 500,000 yen as an election deposit, standing on Akiko's small truck, still struggling with his words. Even if everyone likes Takeharu, if he cannot express himself clearly, it is obviously not acceptable. The president did not expect that after resolving Yosaburo, someone would still come out to stir trouble. Upon learning that Nakanu-san was not home, the president could not suppress his lust. Unexpectedly, many small crayfish suddenly emerged from the president's clothes, scaring him into a hasty escape. Natsu then realized that her son, who loved crayfish, might have already possessed a sensitivity that even he was unaware of. The day before the voting, Yosaburo, after finishing breakfast, stared at the grains of rice in his bowl, suddenly lost in thought, and no one knew what he was contemplating. At this moment, with the president's support, Ikichi had almost formed an overwhelming advantage. However, he learned that the president did not want the poor village to develop. but rather wanted to turn this place into a new garbage disposal site. Takeharu at this moment felt a desire to withdraw, believing he could not win. Akiko did not expect that her missing husband had returned. Yosaburo stood in front of his house, using a police car's loudspeaker to express his feelings. Before coming here, he had lost everything that made him human. But in the years spent here, he gained the wealth he had not obtained in the first half of his life. Perhaps Takeharu once said, "Do not sell, do not buy," which indeed is puzzling. However, his funds had never been used on himself. Every penny was spent on everyone else. This village may become even poorer, but perhaps, like Takeharu, pursuing something more precious beyond money is the hope for the village's future. This was the simple and pure support Yosaburo provided for Takeharu, filled with humanity. Now, Yosaburo's suspicion has been cleared, as the real culprit has already confessed. It turns out that after Tajimi violated the other party, he instructed Katsuo to kill her if he was arrested. Yosaburo knew the truth, but chose to forgive out of consideration for old feelings, which is why he bore the accusation for many years. This time, it finally ended satisfactorily. Takeharu also gathered his courage, taking out his last 1 million yen, declaring through action that he would do his utmost to help this village, to help the villagers he loves and who love him. As a guardian spirit, Nakanu-san can know everything without leaving the hot spring. This time, he brought the final hidden danger here. There is a reason why mortals are forbidden to step into this place. He wants to take Tajimi away, and this is also the last day of Nakanu-san's existence in this body. For a moment, the earth shook and the mountains swayed, and Aiken was the first to sense his grandfather's departure. Countless small crayfish fell from the sky. Due to the passing of the guardian spirit of the impoverished village, all villagers must observe mourning, and the election is postponed for a month. And this month allowed Ikichi to clarify what he truly wanted. He bravely confronted the president face to face and made the choice he believed was right. A month later, Ikichi gave up running for election. Takeharu is still the miser who does not engage in any consumption, helps everyone handle affairs, and barters. He has officially established a romantic relationship with Aoba, becoming a couple envied by many. Everything is developing in a positive direction, and life continues to cycle here. And that mysterious guardian spirit has returned to this land that has been protected for 1,000 years. This time, his name is Koichi.